तमाम सुनने वालों को हमारा अस्सलाम वालेकुम, नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, good evening to Dallas Fort Worth, greetings to the whole world and listeners of Radio Azad through the world wide web, smartphones and tablet computers. I'm Ramesh और आप सुन रहे हैं किताबों में लिखा है प्रोग्राम on Radio Azad, Voice of the People. With me is Nandita, who is the host for the program. We hope that you're enjoying the weekend that is also combining with the holy month of Ramadan. Last time we reviewed Toss of a Lemon by Padma Vishwanathan, who is a fiction writer, playwright and journalist, as you're aware. It's a fiction book that examines the over 8,000 years old Tamil culture that the author finds out from the words of her own ancestors. We were also very fortunate to have had Padma Vishwanathan herself that spoke to us during the review. We hope that you enjoyed the show and also its rebroadcast last week. Today we are going to review a book called White Tiger, written by Aravind Adiga, an Indian writer and journalist whose debut novel, The White Tiger, won the 2008 Man Booker Prize. He is the fourth Indian-born author to win the prize after Salman Rushdie, Arundhati Roy and Kiran Desai. This novel studies the contrast between India's rise as a modern global economy and the lead character Balram, who comes from a crushing rural poverty. In Aravind Adiga's words, at a time when India is going through great changes and with China likely to inherit the world from the West, it is important that writers like me try to highlight the brutal injustices of society Indian, and that's what I am trying to do. It is not an attack on the country, it's about the greater process of self-examination. He explained that the criticism by writers like Flaubert, Balzac and Dickens of the 19th century helped England and France become better societies. In April 2009, it was announced that that a novel would be adapted into a feature film. For this book, we have also invited two distinguished people, Anaka, Johnston and Vera from NetIP. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I am also known as Annie.
Annie, okay. And Anaka, you have been with us before, so...
I have, and thank you so much for having us back. It's nice to be here again.
Yeah. So, as you will recall, that both... we have Meghaji also, who is the Vice President of NetIP. She will be joining us on phone. And as you know, Megha and Anaka had joined us for the review of Mindy Kaling's fun-filled book called Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me? So we are very glad to have them with us again. This is our 28th episode of Kitabon Mein Likha Hai. Our phone lines are open at all times, so you can share with us your viewpoints. You can also call us. You can call us at 972-501-9390. In case you want to hear any specific episode, let us know through Facebook, or you can email us at shows@radioazad.us, and we'll be glad to rebroadcast or try sending a copy of the podcast. We're with you up till 7 p.m. and hope that this program is interesting, entertaining, and informative. It is not necessary that you have read this book earlier. Our objective is that we discuss this book and share our viewpoints. So over to Nandita for the review of White Tiger by Aravind Adiga.
Thank you for the introduction, Ramesh. You gave a very good background of the book and the author. So we have Anaka with us and Anna, who have spent some time reading the book and analyzing it. I see their notes. They have amazing notes around the book. So one of you should give a background of the story.
Okay. A simple background is it's a story of a man who is born into extreme poverty. He lives in a rural village in East India, and it's kind of his desire to become more and follow his dreams per se, and the difficult obstacles he faces. And in the end, he has a very amoral way of securing a business for himself. So that's the basic plot. and his journey toward his idea of success through the obstacles that he incurs.
So it is his rags to riches story. तो हमारे जो सुनने वाले हिंदी में जरा सुनना पसंद करेंगे उनके लिए ये कहानी है, जैसे अनका ने बताया, अरविंद अडिगा की ये कहानी शुरू होती है बिहार के गांव में, जहां पे हमारे प्रोटैगोनिस्ट बलराम हलवाई या मुन्ना बहुत ही गरीबी में बड़े होते हैं, बट ही हैज एम्बिशन, वो कुछ कर दिखाना चाहते हैं, हालांकि ही फेसेस अ लॉट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स एंड अलोंग द वे ही मेक्स अ लॉट ऑफ कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस. बट द मोस्ट इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग अबाउट दिस बुक इज द वे इट इज रिटन. इसे लिखा है लेटर्स के रूप में. तो आई थिंक एनी हैड अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट देयर अबाउट द स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग विच इज कॉल्ड एपिस्टोलरी, यानी चिट्ठियों के रूप में नॉवल लिखना. तो एनी, विल यू टेल अस समथिंग अबाउट इट?
The epistolary form of writing was a form of realistic writing which some authors adopted to actually go into the way a person would think, the psychological workings of his mind. And what happens is many realistic novels were criticized because the voice of the author was very prominent in whatever the author would write or describe. And the epistolary form of the novel kind of took it away. It looked as if the person, the protagonist, is the one who is actually writing about it. So the author becomes goes to the background, literally.
Okay. Mm.
So in a way, अरविंद अडिगा ये नहीं कह रहे हैं what is being said. Balram Halwai, or later the White Tiger, is the one who is saying it. So these may not necessarily be the views of Aravind Adiga. So very interesting. The letters are being written to the Chinese premier, right? So he hears on All India Radio that the Chinese premier is coming to India to learn about Indian entrepreneurship, and he's going to visit a few entrepreneurs and meet them. And he knows what goes on, what he will hear will be the half truth, not the full truth. So he wants to give him a picture of how an entrepreneur is made, and who else other than he himself is an example of making it all the way from a poor son of a rickshaw puller to becoming an entrepreneur. At this time, he is of course running a taxi service while he is writing this letters to the Chinese premier, but he has potential to do more. So that's also very interesting, right?
It is interesting, and we discussed during our book club too as to why the author chose for our main character, our protagonist, to be writing the Chinese prime minister. I mean, out of everyone he could be writing letters to, he's writing the Chinese prime minister. And too, as you mentioned, he's attempting to show the prime minister the true side of India and whatnot, because he's assuming that when the Chinese prime minister arrives, he'll see all these
people receiving him with namastes, and everybody giving a very saintly look.
Yes.
As though,
and statues. I think sandalwood statues of Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to paint a very, very saintly picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's trying to expose the truth. That's what he says his attempt is. And I think, too, Annie brought up the interesting idea of the letter as well, that it truly allows for the character's psychological personality to be more so explored than if the author were writing in another style.
So, Annie, we were just talking about this book before the program started, and you told that the first chapter really intrigued you because it lays down the full foundation of what's going to come.
Yes. When I first picked up the book, I was caught up with the style of the author. I felt that he had this very engaging, conversational, to the point of drama style of which keeps you engaged with the book. And that's one thing that immediately struck me. And I felt the first chapter actually lays down the reason why he's writing it. That is, the immediate reason is the Premier of China's visit to India. The underlying reason is his attempt to justify what he had done to become an entrepreneur. And he is in the process laying out on one side he's laying out the fact that he had done this crime, which comes through the fact that the police have put up a wanted kind of a notice for him. And then on the other side he is trying to start off justifying as to what made him do it. So I think in the first chapter it's a starting point of what follows in the remaining chapters.
So Anaka, what is your impression of the first chapter?
I agree with Annie that the first chapter really allows you to see the unique personality of our protagonist. And I think that he's somewhat likable from the very beginning. He's funny, he's sarcastic, he's honest. Sometimes I felt maybe he wasn't getting his facts straight, so you have to question, is he reliable or is he an unreliable narrator? But regardless, from the very first chapter, you like him, which I think is significant because when he does finally commit the horrendous crime, the reader's in the place to justify, well, was he right to commit the crime or was he not? And you like him and you almost want to forgive him. So I think, as she says, that personality that's quite likable is established from the very beginning.
He was brutally honest.
Yes, he is.
I think the one comment that you put up on Facebook for the book review, I just noted it down, and that kind of lays the tone for the whole novel. That is his tone too. My country is the kind, I quote, my country is the kind where it pays to play it both ways. The Indian entrepreneur has to be straight and crooked, mocking and believing, shy and sincere at the same time. Unquote.
So a bundle of contradictions, summing it up. Yeah, it's very interesting. The first chapter, when you go through it, you get a feeling that the novel is definitely amoral and irreverent to a good extent.
Very.
And another thing is, the other Booker Prize winners, like I have tried reading Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. I'm hearing it now on audio, actually. And Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things. Somehow Kiran Desai's book, it just missed me. Mm-hmm. So they write very complex stories, and the way they write it, it's hard for a person to really continue reading and get to the main part. So they are tough books. But this book is written in a very engaging book, and that's why, Anaka, I was asking you whether this book will be ever taught in literature classes, because of its very free-flowing style of writing.
I think very much so. It will be taught in literature classes, and as I told you before we started the show, that some people have already started researching it and writing scholarly articles on it. So very much considered literature, and I think will definitely be on syllabi and literary classes across colleges and universities.
Yeah, because at the surface, it's a simple story, as we all spoke. It's a man's rags to riches story, how at every step he learns what he should be doing next, compromising on moral values, even going up to the extent of murder. Yet the undercurrents which are there are much deeper, right? The story is just like the tip of the iceberg. When you read it, you feel that society around you. And the simple story has much complex grounding. This is what I felt. And
when I kind of heard about the whole thing and a little bit of the information, I felt that there is a revolution which is going to take place with this, because people will suddenly get up to think what they should be doing in their self-examination process and try to amend themselves or explore themselves, probably give a different treatment. And I'm also afraid about the cynical thing which will come as a backdrop of this. People may view now the Indians with a little bit of cynicism, because every person now has got a different character in him. We feel if you see a person of a particular origin, you'll say, oh man, this person is probably eyeing for some greater benefit somewhere. And then when you look at the master's point of view, you'll feel this man isn't doing all things right. So I don't know how that revolution is going to take place, but it looks as though it may take shape like what Charles Dickens did or something, to change a whole society. Well, Nandita doesn't feel that same way. She says it may be just passing off like another novel.
Yeah, it's very hard to bring a revolution into the Indian society.
I think what Aravind Adiga tried to do in this novel is say it's kind of a warning that if things do not change, we see that in India there are certain pockets in India where there are violent anti-government movements going on. And he does point at it in certain places where he says that election time they were wearing red banners. So it is appointed to the violent kind of uprisings that happen against the rich because of corruption. And so, Aravind, I would especially like to the way Balaram becomes an entrepreneur, that is by killing his master. And then he says, and the name of his taxi company is the White Tiger Fleet. The Fleeter. So in a way, he might be pointing out to the fact that this could be repeated. It's not one single white tiger.
Very interesting.
It could be a fleet of white tigers.
So I think there is somebody who wants to contribute to the White Tiger Fleet. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, this is Megha.
Hi, Anaka and Annie. It's Megha.
Hi, Megha.
It's great to hear you guys on the radio, and I'm still driving, so I thought I'll quickly call.
You're still driving?
Yeah, I left a little late, so I'm almost about to get there, get home.
Okay.
So I thought I'll call before that. But that was a great introduction and a great summary, and I liked what you guys have said so far about the writing style. And I totally agree. I think his writing style is so free-flowing, like Nandaji said. And he, I think in this, I was trying to listen to the audiobook again while driving today, just to review a little bit. The first time I had heard the book or read the book, I kind of made out the difference. Like, you're right, the whole book is set up on based off stark contradiction. Right, and then he brings up the rich and the poor, and also the differences between the religion. I think the way he brings that out, and how everything is about religion or the caste, and that was brought up really well when he both worked for the driver, or even before that, when he is trying to learn driving, and the person asked, what caste are you from? And he goes, I'm Halwai. And he goes, oh, you're a sweet maker. You're not going to be a good driver. You need Kshatriyas or Muslims to be driver, because they know how to fight.
True. Very interesting.
So, but right from the first chapter, you know the protagonist is a self-motivated person. I was just talking with Annie earlier, before when we were discussing this book. And I thought right from the get-go, we know that the protagonist is a self-motivated person because he says, I just heard on All India Radio that the Chinese premier is coming, and so I'm going to write this letter. I mean, he takes it upon himself to say, okay, well, I'm going to sit down and write this letter to the Chinese premier. So I thought and he has this very unusually high self-esteem of himself, that, he...
The right word would be megalomaniac.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so he is one of those kind of people. I thought that's how the first few lines when anybody reads and it goes, well, I just heard you're coming, so I'm going to tell you all about entrepreneurship in India. So that shows a huge, it becomes a huge part in his life actually, because every time he runs into a problem, his self-motivation or he doesn't want to stay down basically. And just quickly, I would say just the whole thing. I like the part about the light and the dark, where he says everywhere where the ocean touches India is the light part, is where the light comes to, and everywhere where the river flows, River Ganga flows, is the dark part. And I just loved it, the way the author so easily divided the India. Just a few days ago, Ramesh P. and I were talking on the show about the difference between North India and South India. And here it is, plain and simple. North India, and he goes, how the river has always been such a big part of that part of the country, and it has all these, he mentioned something about history also, like from the time of Mahabharata and stuff. So I think the way he was trying to say is that it has always been a problem part, and then that part of the country has been ruled by the Muslims first, and then the British. Well, of course, British ruled the whole of India, but South India wasn't that much under the rule. I think the North India had about 200 years of British rule, whereas the South India had maybe 100 years. So I thought he brought up the divide between the North and South really well by that, and also his use of animal. I mean, his imagery, the imagery in the book. He really will write very vividly, and uses animal. Analogy very well.
Yes.
Because of course the main character is the white tiger, and then the four villains in the book are also animals. If you notice, they did not give them the names. Everyone else has the proper names, but the villains, they don't have the name. They're only four, like buffalo, a wild boar, a stork, and a raven.
Yes.
So that was very...
So he makes it a jungle.
Makes it very general, because you can find these in any village. It's kind of... And the monks at the end, towards the end, the owners or the masters, rather, is called monks. So I thought that was very... clever, or very, very smart of them to use that analogy. And I think that's it. And one more thing, I thought it was really just the simplicity by which he explains away the caste system. That's just, I was just wow. He says the educated people in the city always complicate the caste system. It's not that complicated. It's very simple. Before the British and when the country was at it in heydays, it was like a well-kept coop. Everybody in their place, and everybody doing their stuff, their work. But after 1947, when the British left, the gates of the coop came open, and then it became the jungle law, where the big and the huge ate the smaller ones and became big-bellied. And so he says, in India there are two kinds of people, big-bellied and small-bellied. And if you're big bellies, then you are going to, bully out the other people and take care of yourself. And then then later on he connects that with his act when he takes. He mentions that he had taken a couple of passengers in his master's car and made some money on the side.
Yes.
Because I had finally making a big belly of myself. So it's a very complicated. It's not very, but I would say it has a lot of different layers, and it's a very interesting book. I would definitely recommend anybody to read this.
So, Megha, how? Are you likely to come back again for the discussion?
Probably not. I'm almost getting home, so it's a couple of questions that came up. I know Anaka would have some discussion questions too, but a couple of questions that had come up when we at NetIP had discussed this book was, would you trust this person? A person like this, I mean, most of the time he is honest and hardworking and everything, but at the end of the day, he still murdered somebody. And then he also covered up another murder, not a murder, but an accident or a homicide. So I thought he included that story to kind of also justify himself that, there was a homicide and the guy is dead anyway, so I'll just pay off his parents to make up for it.
Yeah, we will definitely discuss these questions as we proceed with the show. Megha, we will take a break now. It's time for the ads, and keep hearing.
I'll listen to you guys, and I might not be able to call back, but I'm sure you guys will have a great show. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be missing you.
Thanks. All right, no problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Megha.
All right, bye.
Okay, for those who have tuned in for the show, we are... आप सुन रहे हैं रेडियो आजाद वॉइस ऑफ द पीपल. हमारा फोन नंबर है 9725019390. लाइव आप सुन रहे हैं ऑन द इंटरनेट @www.radioazad.us. मैक यूजर्स हमें सुन रहे हैं in shoutcast.com. iTunes Radio Library में under the category of International World, you can click and listen. For text updates, you can text follow Radio Azad to 40404. You can download our iPhone Radio Azad, TuneIn Radio, HiDef Radio, and Shoutcast Radio apps. And for Android smartphones and BlackBerry phones, you can use the Winamp and TuneIn Radio apps. Live streaming आप सुन सकते हैं at 302-781-8275. You can follow us on Twitter, watch us on YouTube, join us on Facebook. नंदिता और मैं रमेश आपके लिए पेश कर रहे हैं किताबों में लिखा है प्रोग्राम, और आज हम रिव्यू कर रहे हैं व्हाइट टाइगर बाय अरविंद अडिगा विथ Anna, Vera, and Anaka, Johnston. So, over to Nandita for the review of White Tiger.
तो हमारे जो लिसनर्स लेट ज्वाइन किए हैं, लेट मी गिव अ रिव्यू ऑफ द बुक अगेन. तो ये कहानी है द वाइट टाइगर, द डेब्यू नॉवल बाय अरविंद अडिगा. इट्स अ रैग्स टू रिचेस स्टोरी, जो हम पहले बात कर रहे थे. बलराम हलवाई जो एक रिक्शा पुलर के बेटे हैं इन अ विलेज, वो किस तरह से एंटरप्रेन्योर बनते हैं बैंगलोर में. एंड इट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी ऑफ हाउ ही कीप्स ऑन टेकिंग वन स्टेप एट अ टाइम. किस तरह वो गांव से छोटे टाउन पहुंचते हैं धानबाद से दिल्ली से बैंगलोर. और इट्स जस्ट हिज स्मार्टनेस एंड observations and willing to make compromises based on what he is learning from around him, because he learns that the way of the world and success comes through not being moral, not being righteous, but being smart and sly. तो ये है कहानी in a simple way. Of course it involves theft and murder Kyunki in the beginning itself, we come to know in the first chapter that Balram Halwai has murdered his erstwhile employer, जिनके पास वो ड्राइवर थे, उन्होंने उनका मर्डर कर दिया है, और 7 lakh rupees, 700,000, which is in India we use the term lakhs, it's very common. तो 7 लाख रुपए लेके वो रफू चक्कर हो जाते हैं.
For Anaka may not know what is lakh. I mean, in million you have 6 zeros after.
100,000 is a lakh.
Yeah,
okay.
So 100,000 is a lakh.
Yeah, तो 7 लाख रुपए लेके रफू चक्कर हो जाते हैं. और he makes his way to Bangalore and uses all the skills which he has learned while he was a driver by observing his masters of bribing, manipulation, and makes his way to success. So, very interesting story as we have been discussing till now. तो काफी इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट्स मेघा ने भी रेज किए. Of course, the line was not so clear. I think her voice was breaking a bit because she was driving and speaking, but she raised many interesting points, and we can discuss about them in more details. One was about the India of the dark and India of the light. Any one of you would like to speak about it?
Before we go, I just wanted to get back to one of the points that you had raised earlier regarding the language that you had written, the very simple English. Mm-hmm. You said that Salman Rushdie and Arundhati Roy were more difficult to read. I think both of them portrayed middle class, upper class protagonists. And this, I believe, I've not read any of Aravind Adiga's other books. I believe the style might have been adopted to maybe show someone who was not very familiar with English. Otherwise, if he had used very complicated English, it would not have sounded like a Balram Halwai. So
very correct.
Maybe. Yes. I believe it could be one of the reasons why this language was...
That could be, and also every year the style of writing is changing. Mm-hmm. We are moving towards more simplistic ways of writing. If you read Charles Dickens, you have to read every chapter twice to get it. Mm-hmm. But the way people are writing now, it's becoming simpler. Mm-hmm. Salman Rushdie wrote in the late 70s, and he won the Booker in 1981.
He wrote it almost like a British person.
Yeah. And it's not the language, the complexity of the language, it's the complexity of the story. The stories are very complex. Mm-hmm. Like, what's happening on the surface, and there is another layer going on, and then a third. This is also a very layered story, mm-hmm. but one could just get the upper layer itself is enough for you to get the story. You can enjoy it. Or you can go one layer more, or one layer beneath it. Mm-hmm. But those stories are more complex in the way the author's thoughts have flowed, mm-hmm. in addition to the language.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a very interesting thing, that this is kind of very simplistic. Some critics have actually seen it as a very simplistic way of dealing with India's problems today. And they have.
We will come to that point also. Mm-hmm. Annie, you have a very interesting point you have raised about the criticism this book received in India, and we will talk about it. But let's deal on this one, the India of the light and India of the dark. And he goes on about it, right? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. He does, and there's many metaphors that refer to the India of the dark and the India of the light, and the darkness and the light. One of the metaphors is established from the very beginning, I think, at his mother's funeral. And he kind of sees this darkness creeping in on his village. And that metaphor of the darkness continues throughout. And earlier, Annie and I were discussing one of the metaphors for the light.
So, the urban India is what is the India of the light. Mm-hmm. And rural India, where they don't have urban India, of at least you have more facilities. You have schools and hospitals, maybe not so much for the poor. Still, you can think of having them. But in rural India, the situation is much worse. There are hospitals in which the doctors never turn up. There are schools where the teachers are not there and the funds are embezzled. So rural India is facing a much more difficult time. It's much more difficult for a person in rural India to rise than it is for a person in urban India. In urban India, you could be the son of a servant and you could go to one of the government schools and somehow make your way up. But if you are in rural India, you are doomed. And there was a very interesting article by Aravind Adiga. I was looking at it on his site, arvindadiga.com, and this was published in Tehelka, where how he got the idea of the India of the dark and India of the light. So in between, when he started writing The White Tiger, he was lost. He didn't know where the novel was going, what direction. So he took a break. He went to Kolkata, the city of joy. So and he went there for a holiday, but he's a journalist. He can't be sitting there on a holiday. So he went and approached some NGOs and asked, is this anything I can do for you? They said, the Prime Minister wants to abolish the rickshaw pulling here. In Calcutta, you have the system where the man pulls the rickshaw. I don't think you have it in rest of India now. We have cycle rickshaws where the rickshaw puller cycles and then people are sitting behind. But in Calcutta, the man just like a horse, he pulls the rickshaw. It's very inhuman. I hear even Pakistanis criticize it and say that we don't have it in Pakistan. It was abolished, but we have it in very few places in India, and maybe Calcutta is one of them. The reason is the roads are so narrow that even a cycle rickshaw will find it difficult to maneuver, maybe. You have been in Calcutta, right? You can tell what could be the reason.
I believe the one which has the pedals on it might be more expensive because it has more mechanical parts involved.
Okay, so whereas it's just the cost.
This is just the
man being a horse.
Yeah, it's just that thing stretching from the. I believe one of it is that. Another could be the roads, as you said.
The roads are narrow. Yes.
Are very narrow, and I think in older parts of Delhi too, they do it.
They have it still.
I haven't seen. Okay.
Old Delhi, I'm not sure though.
Calcutta definitely.
Calcutta definitely, yes.
And at some point of time, all of us might have used it. So. Don't be shocked, Anaka. So he goes on to interview these rickshaw pullers. There are 20 rickshaw pullers. All of them have come from Bihar. The story begins in Bihar, which is even more backward than Bengal, where Kolkata is the city of light as per him because it's an urban place near the sea. And these rickshawalas from Bihar, they live there and they tell him about their life. Especially he befriends one of them who tells him a lot about his life. And he comes up with this metaphor of light and darkness, the rickshawala. He says, he asked the rickshawala finally after hearing that you seem to be such an intelligent man. And is there nothing you can do in your village that you have to come to this city and pull a rickshaw? Something in your village like agriculture or some small job. Then he tells him, he has a son. The son is there with him. He says, okay, this is my son. He goes to school here. And I have 3 daughters and they live with my sister somewhere in Calcutta and all of them are going to school. And if I take them to village now, the first thing will be I will have to marry off my girls. I can't even educate them because the rural society will put that kind of a pressure on him to do that. So from there he got the concept of India of the dark and India of the light. He started calling the urban, at least in the urban places, there is some hope. It's very hard for the poor still, but they can hope to educate their next generation or their next generation could do better. But in India of the dark, which is the rural places, there is no hope at all. So that was a very interesting article. It is in Aravind Adiga's site.
I have this right in front of me, and there he talks to a rickshaw puller who says, "We are clean people, sir, and good people. I am a Muslim, but I live here with Hindus, and there is no trouble. We have separate kitchens, and we respect each other."
Very good. So
I think it's an interesting point that you two bring up, that in these rural areas there is no hope. Some of the questions we had during our book club discussion that I've had with others is, did the protagonist have to commit a murder to get ahead? And some of us felt that it was the only way he could get ahead in his life. So it kind of refers back to the idea, when there is no hope and there's no way to move forward, what is an individual to do?
Very, very interesting point. And yes, in urban India there is some hope, but it is very slow. A person like Balram Halwai sees good life around him. He sees the malls, he sees the 5-star hotels, which he cannot go and enjoy. He sees his master with girls and English liquor. He wants to have all of that, and he wants to have it fast. He could have, it is possible that he could have had a family and children, and his children would have done little better than him, and then the next generation maybe a little better, and 3 generations later they might have reached some place. But he didn't want it that way. He wanted to have it all for himself. And that is a very interesting thing. In a straight way, it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for him to reach this. We have
a caller who would like to discuss something about how a person can change his life. Hello, you're on the air.
नमस्कार रमेश बाबू.
Oh, नमस्कार हक साहब, how are you?
मैं घर पे नहीं हूँ, मैं बहुत दूर हूँ घर से.
अरे
लेकिन मैं टेलीफोन पे कुछ बीच में सुन रहा था.
अच्छा.
व्हाइट एलिफेंट तो सुना था, व्हाइट टाइगर नहीं.
व्हाइट एलिफेंट.
अरे सफेद बाघ तो है ना हमारे सुंदरबन में, व्हाइट टाइगर होता है.
बांग्लादेश सुंदरबन.
और ये कहानी आपके बिहार में शुरू होती है.
वही शुरू में मैंने सुना था, और ये दैट्स व्हाट स्ट्रक मी. दूसरे वो जो है वो बीच में सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग जो था वो पोर्शन था, वो मेगा का शॉर्ट स्टे और शॉर्ट लिस्टिंग. तो नहीं, मैं सुन रहा था. और ये किताब क्या उस पे मिल जाएगी?
ऑडिबल में तो मिल जाती है.
ऑडिबल में मिल जाएगी, एंड आई बॉट इट फ्रॉम ऑडिबल. ओनली थिंग इज यू विल हैव टू हियर समबडी कॉल गंगा को वो गंजा बोलते हैं ऑडिबल में, विच वॉज वेरी हार्श ऑन माई ईयर्स. कानों को लग रहा था जब वो गंगा को गंजा बोल रहे थे.
राम तेरी गंगा मैली.
गंगा मैली हो गई.
पापियों के पाप ने गंगा को गंजा कर
दिया. सर के बाल उड़ा दिए.
Anaka, for you to know, Ganja is a bald man.
Okay.
And Ganga is a river. So in Audible, I think the person who was narrating it is an English person, and he didn't know Ganga, so he went on saying Ganja.
Okay.
A white man reciting a white tiger.
But in an Indian accent.
Can go into the white lies. अच्छा, ये बताइए मुझे कि ये बिहार में किस इलाके की कहानी?
ये धनबाद के पास, क्योंकि जब वो कोल माइंस के पास के जो गांव है वहाँ की कहानी है. क्योंकि वो गांव से पहले जब वो नौकरी करने आते हैं चाय की दुकान में, बलराम हलवाई, तो वो धनबाद आते हैं पहले, और वहाँ पे ऑलरेडी पीपल आर बिकमिंग रिच बिकॉज ऑफ द कोल माइंस. और वो जिनके लिए ड्राइव करते हैं वो भी कोल का बिजनेस करते हैं, कोयले का बिजनेस करते हैं.
अच्छा, चाय की दुकान पे मुझे याद आया कि इंटरेस्टिंग चीज अभी मैं पढ़ रहा था कि वो बहादुर शाह जफर जो बादशाह थे ना, जो लास्ट एम्परर ऑफ मुगल एम्परर कहते हैं, उनकी एक ग्रैंड डॉटर है, पड़पोती है, उनकी जो है बर्दवान में चाय की एक दुकान है.
अच्छा.
और उन्होंने गवर्नमेंट से बहुत अपील भी किया है कि हम जो है मुगल खानदान के हैं और हमारी जो है शाइस्ता किए जाए. तो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी थी कि भाई कैसे कैसे लोग कैसे हो गए और ऐसे वैसे कैसे कैसे हो गए.
सही बात है.
हाँ, तो ठीक है, मैं फिर इसको आपको मैं वक्त नहीं लूंगा ज्यादा, मैं चूंकि हुई नहीं हूँ, कंप्यूटर के पास नहीं.
अच्छा,
मैं जिनके आया हूँ वहाँ बहुत लोग हैं तो मैं सुन भी नहीं सकता ठीक से. मैं गाड़ी में आके बस सुन रहा था थोड़ा सा. अच्छा
जी, आपके पास ये इन्फॉर्मेशन ये है कि व्हाइट टाइगर इज अवेलेबल इन किंडल एडिशन, हार्ड कवर एडिशन, पेपर बैक, सब.
सुंदरबन तो मैं गया हूँ, खुलना के पास है. ना, तो मैं वहाँ, मेरे भाई रहते थे खुला न्यूज प्रिंट मिल में, तो सुंदरबन से वहाँ लकड़ियाँ आती थी वो पेपर मिल्स के लिए.
ओके.
वहाँ जो है वो टाइगर्स का बहुत बहुत डेंजरस भी होता है, इसलिए कि वहाँ जो हंटिंग करते ये जाते हैं, वो तालाब, वो दरिया बना हुआ है ना, दरिया में बन बना हुआ है, वो भी है.
हाँ, I have not seen the Sundarban, but
beautiful. It's a सुंदर माने खूबसूरत, वन माने जंगल.
Yes.
It's a beautiful forest with beautiful tiger in it, huh?
Yeah. So, Haq Saab, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for taking the call. Okay, मैं इसको rebroadcast में भी सुनूंगा और मैं उसको Google और ऑडियो पे भी करूंगा.
अच्छा,
sure.
ठीक है, thanks for taking the call. Enjoy your show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, he raised a good point on the name of the book, The White Tiger, right?
Mm-hmm.
और उसके बारे में भी काफी कुछ Aravind Adiga has brought up on why
the origin of the term
the white tiger, why he was called the White Tiger, and then he chooses to call his company as the White Tiger Fleet. You want to speak something about it?
It's a question we definitely discussed in book club, and I think there could be countless interpretations as to why the white tiger. One point relating to the name is that throughout the novel he's given various names, either by the teacher or his parents and so forth. He finally takes on this idea of the white tiger, and one could read that as this is the name he gives himself as he establishes his own individuality that hasn't been given to him, which is an important theme of the book. Then he's this white tiger, which is quite rare, and so in a sense it also symbolizes his individual self. So that is one interpretation that we
Very
discussed.
interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's basically how different he is from the others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we were talking, not everybody will commit a murder to get to success so quickly. So he says it takes a white tiger to do it, especially because he talks of the rooster coop, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rooster coop, I don't know if you read that description, but I have seen it and I know what he is talking about. And you must have also seen, right?
Yes.
It's the way they sell meat, chicken meat in India. You have the rooster coop.
Very gory
It's very gory.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote about it, and he says that the poor in India are like caught in a rooster coop, like the chicken who are inside it. And they just don't have a way to escape. The reason is their family. He could have murdered and run away, but then he very well knows what will happen to his family in the village.
Because they will be killed.
They will be killed, and not just killed, it will be merciless killing. And we know that these kind of things keep happening. Revenge is so strong, and that's why people don't do something like this, because it's not only about them, it's about their family. But he doesn't care. He has already distanced himself from his family, and he takes this step. He knows his grandmother and aunts and brother and uncles, everyone will be murdered after that and brutally. But still, he takes this step to make a better life for himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned also
sacrifice.
that after some time he knows that they are already gone from the surface of the world, and he goes to give them, he commemorates them and all those things even without knowing about the fact.
He takes it for granted that they are no longer alive.
Mm-hmm.
When he does this step, he very well knows what will happen to the rest of his family.
Mm-hmm. And two, you bring up the metaphor of the rooster coop, which I think is quite important, and maybe the author's criticism of the aspects of society he might be criticizing, and also the protagonist's view. The idea, he says at one point, that even if someone opened up the coop and threw a key, I think, to the rooster, they wouldn't even come out. Kind of going back to the idea that even if the poorest of the poor had a chance, they wouldn't even know what to do with that chance and wouldn't take it. They just accepted this fate.
Very, very true, yeah.
Here I'd like to add the other point that I was saying at the time about Gramsci's concept of hegemony, which actually says that this is exactly why people may not move out of the rooster coop. And this point is laid out earlier in the novel, where he talks about how Hanuman
Very interesting part.
Yes, he is the faithful servant of Ram. And so he says, what Gramsci says is this, that you win it through any kind of system is established or continues in the same manner without a change, because it is reinforced either through consent or through force. So where there is force, where most of it is won through consent. And consent comes through cultural expressions and religion, education, stories, movies, all are cultural ways of winning consent for a particular way of life. And that's a very...
I agree. When I was hearing the book on Audible, and he spoke about the thing about Hanuman. Hanuman is a god who is revered for being loyal to his master. His loyalty and the fact that he does not think so much. He just does what his master. Of course, the master is at the end of it God, but you can look at it in different ways. So when people pray to Hanuman, and especially in the villages, he is a big god, somehow it's deep in their morality that they have to do their master's command. It's very hard for them to come out of it.
There are so many movies. Namak halal, namak haram.
Yes.
Right.
Namak halal.
Namak halal.
Very interesting.
I think too, it's a universal theme that not only applies to a rural village in India, but throughout the world. The poorest of the poor accepting their fate. This is just the way it is, and not even looking for opportunities. But again, as we said before, there doesn't seem to be too many opportunities for the characters in this novel. But the idea of just accepting one's fate, I think, is something that we can see everywhere.
That's one of the things that I was wondering. I mean, he calls himself an entrepreneur, and we also kind of been agreeing on it. But what does he actually do to get to the place? The only thing, the biggest act of his is a murder.
Yes.
Is not really work his way up. So to use the word entrepreneur, someone who has really worked his way up to where he is, and that too, coming from the circumstances he comes from.
Embezzles and murders.
And murdering, it's just one act. You murder, you run away with the money, and you use it to start a business. Does it really count as entrepreneurship? I don't know.
So this is why it's a satire, right? It's a satire on the Indian society today, where entrepreneurship is being linked to this kind of incidents. I don't know whether it was in 2008 or 2009, one of the biggest companies of India, Satyam, I think it was 2009, it got into this controversy where they had made so many frauds to establish themselves and keep themselves, and they were one of the biggest companies in India at that time. Right? And we know...
Much like Enron.
Yeah, much like Enron. So, in a way, what we call entrepreneurship today, we are only looking at the end results. And end results wise, he is running a successful taxi service. And this is what he learns. He learns from the family he drives the car for, that through bribing and through corruption, you can get your way, because they are trying to evade taxes. So they have a son sitting in Delhi who takes all this money and gives to the other different ministers. They manipulate the police, and he starts by manipulating the police, right?
Yeah, he is supposed to have bribed the police, gets one major player out of the
market so that he can. So it's not simple. Look, embezzlement and murder was one part of it. But he was smart. He learned the ways of the world. We are not saying that the ways of the world are correct, but he learns the ways of the world, uses it to rise.
But then sometimes he shows some humanity also somewhere, like he tries to help a person who was his fleet member.
We will talk about that,
Okay, he is.
So, yeah, and this question came up, like whether you will trust a person like this, you were saying, right? And what was the feeling?
There were actually mixed feelings at our book club discussion. Some said, well, I would definitely trust him to run a business. He committed the act of murder. We don't think he's going to do it again. So we, meaning the person who had this opinion, so whether or not would he commit murder again. But saying if he hasn't, well, then he's a good businessman. He made his way and made a successful business. But would you trust him as a human being? That's another completely different question. And I think most people said no, they would not trust him. I mean, he sacrificed his family. He committed a murder. So.
True.
I agree with Anaka, though it looks like he seems to justify whatever he has done. But I would still say that the moral compass is important, whether it's in business or in actual life. And it's not just the murder. It's not the fact that he murdered, but there are a series of acts, one after the other, which are all lacking the ethical or moral compass.
So this is what Aravind Adiga has tried to show, that it's not that he's trying to justify this person. I don't think so. I think he's just trying to portray to us what society today is, how entrepreneurs are being made, how people are making compromises. So it's a very severe and harsh satire on the Indian system of today. And this book did get a lot of criticism in India. Every Indian who read it, this morning I was talking to my brother-in-law in India, they do feel a pinch out of it. I see it in your face, Annie, when you are talking about it sometimes, because you feel like fingers pointing to you.
No, not really. I don't feel it that way. It's just that what I don't like about the book is the justification of it. I don't know if the author was able to bring about that kind of non-justification of what he has written.
He kept it immoral. He didn't make it either moral or immoral.
Yes.
He said that, okay, this is it. This is it.
This is what it is.
He didn't pass any judgment, and this what helped was the style in which he wrote, the epistolary style in which his voice is not heard.
Yes.
What is Aravind Adiga's opinion?
But to the point where...
Yeah, we will be taking a break soon.
But to the point where he almost makes it look like it is all right.
Yeah. So we will continue to talk about it after break. Okay.
आप सुन रहे हैं रेडियो आजाद वॉइस ऑफ द पीपल. हमारा फोन नंबर है 9725019390. लाइव आप सुन रहे हैं ऑन द इंटरनेट at www.radioazad.us. मैक यूजर समय सुन रहे हैं shoutcast.com. You can download our iPhone Radio Azad, Tunein Radio, High-Def Radio and Shoutcast Radio apps. Android smartphones, BlackBerry phones के लिए you can use the Winamp and Tunein Radio apps. Live streaming you can hear on 302-781-8275. आज किताबों में लिखा प्रोग्राम में हम रिव्यू कर रहे हैं द बुक व्हाइट टाइगर बाय बुकर प्राइज विनर राइटर एंड जर्नलिस्ट अरविंद अडिगा. दिस इज किताबों में लिखा है. एंड ओवर टू नंदिता, Anaka and Annie.
So before the break, we were talking about the moral aspect of the book, and Annie strongly felt that the book does not make you feel very good at the end of it, because you feel that the murder is somehow justified and this guy is never punished. he has a much better life than what he had, and he makes it through murder and theft and many other things. Murder and theft are only part of it.
I have 2 points of view in this. One is about the commonsensical moral world that we live in, which we all identify with. Somehow doesn't make sense to me in context of that kind of a world. But if that moral world is actually an established order for the continuation of injustice to a certain section of society, then yes, it makes sense. Then what he does makes sense. But so there are basically, that would be playing the devil's advocate.
Well, I think the society has all kinds of people. So you have the good, bad, and the grayish good and bad. I mean, so it's the good are those type of righteous people who do their entrepreneurship with hard work and grow up the ladder, and I mean they reinvest, get better and better. And there, of course, you do hear of people who are ruling with the bad things. Example, the underworld people, that it's a whole big business going on everywhere. I mean, whether it was in Al Capone or in Chicago or and Dawood Ibrahim, we know that it's all there. So, yeah.
So, essentially what I was talking about was, this is definitely a big criticism of the Indian society. What, in a way, Aravind Adiga has tried to say is, as you correctly put it, that for a certain section of the society, there is no choice. The choice is to do these compromises with their moral compass to get success, to become successful faster. But what are they learning? They are learning it from the others. The society today is so corrupt. They see corruption all around them. They see even the successful who don't need to do it that way, maybe. For example, his masters. They have this coal business. They could pay their taxes, but just to avoid taxes, they're sitting in Delhi and bribing the ministers, giving them this bagfuls of money just to avoid taxes. So this is what they learn and see in society around them. And what he says, that his brother who works hard at the tea shop, he knows that he will become a better tea maker maybe, but he won't rise in life. Right?
True.
So this is what people are learning from what they are seeing around them. That being honest, being upright, and this is not only for the poor, this is even for society in general. And this is why this book has been criticized heavily, because it has pinched the Indians at a place where they don't want to do that self-examination of their own society. And I'm being very critical. Maybe things are not all that bad, but yes, we need to do this self-examination where the society is so corrupt and there is such a big difference between the rich and the poor. You earn these days getting 100,000 a month, and I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking rupees. Okay, it's common. People are getting 75,000 rupees to 100,000, what we call 1 lakh in India, is becoming a normal salary for a middle class person. But the person who comes to work in their house,
the maids,
they get like 1,000 rupees a month maybe, right?
True.
Or working in 10 houses, they will make 10,000 rupees a month, which is 1/10 of what and we are not talking of the rich of rich. We are talking of somewhere in the middle. People are making, who are educated and who have a job maybe in an outsourcing company, will make that kind of a money, and the maids and others are getting, and that too in a city, I'm saying maybe they would make 5 to 10,000. I doubt it though. In the villages, not even that much. They would work for a pittance, and their life is bound in this rooster coop out of which they can never come out. So,
and the villages usually have a feudal lord kind of a person there. I mean, who has established his authority over the total administration, and politically he's very strong, and he controls these people in such a way that they just cannot grow. He's like a powerful shade for such people.
Yeah, we spoke about that, right? The four feudal lords who were there, the raven, the buffalo, the stork. Yeah, so it's much more difficult for people in the villages.
It is, and I think to tie in both of the points of the fact that the character is so immoral and unethical, one might almost read it as a criticism of the society that makes him, treats him so inhumanely.
True.
In order to actually become a man, a human, he has to kill a man to become a man. And so that act, that murder, was a result of being so dehumanized and whatnot. He might not have that moral compass that, one equates with being human. So in a sense, perhaps the murder too is a criticism of a society that dehumanizes people and might not give them a chance to make moral decisions and have that moral compass.
It's a very interesting point.
Very interesting point. And that reminds me of that small story within the story of how he is forced. Finally, he doesn't have to, but he is a driver. And the lady of the house was driving and she kills a child. And they make him sign a paper to say that he was driving the car so that he will go to the jail. And he says that this is nothing different. It's happening to drivers in India or Delhi all the time, where they have to take the blame for their masters. So, and this is one point where he starts thinking that he should do something to change his life. This is the turning point in his. Till then he was a very smart guy and he was manipulative. He was trying to get as much for himself. But there is a shift in his moral compass after this when he sees that his masters were ready to send him to jail for something they committed. So,
and that point came up during our book club discussion when we were trying to decide whether or not he's justified in the murder, and someone brought up, had he not murdered his master, he could have been sent to jail and whatnot, and his life is almost a self-defense move as well.
I think at some point in the novel they say that they would have destroyed him if he had not killed his master. I don't remember exactly where, but
in a way
and how does it happen?
He thinks what happens is his master is going out with this girl, new girl, after his wife left, who disapproves of him, and he thinks that he will not even have this job. It's not that he will be killed or something. He will not have this job and this life of a bit of light as compared to his earlier life. And he, of course, wants to grow rich fast. So he sees that, and at any point of time, such a thing can get repeated. The character Ashok, and you wrote down about all the characters, he's a very interesting character, worth talking about, right? Ashok, who was the main person for whom Balram Halwai was the driver. So what do you think of his character?
He is an interesting character. To give a bit of background, he's very well educated. I think he has spent some time in the United States, and he's often critical of the way the servants were treated, but he doesn't do anything about it.
That's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, he keeps quiet. And it's interesting that after killing him, he actually takes his name.
He takes his name, Ashok.
Ashok.
So the character Ashok, as you said, is better than the others. The others, like his father, the stork, or the brother, the mongoose, they are pure evil. And they will go to any extent to degrade this guy, put all kinds of menial tasks on him. Ashok is not actually that way. He doesn't, of course, he has this air of superiority about him, but he doesn't bully him to that extent. Yet he's the one who gets killed.
I think he got killed mainly because of the money. He could grab it and
and because he feels that Ashok is not that worldly smart, he can get away with it. Whereas if he tried it with the mongoose or the stork, they would anticipate every move of his and apprehend him before he could take his steps.
But it is an interesting character, and I thought I wondered if the author meant for that character to be representative of, any person who might talk about, well, this is wrong, it's wrong that people are treated this way, etc., and not to do anything about it. I thought perhaps
it's a very good point you're raising, Anaka. Yes, it represents the most of us in the society, like we are talking about it. We know that this is wrong. There are people who are getting this below minimum wages. I don't even know what word to use. Below is definitely an understatement. So who are getting this pittance of wages and who are treated so badly, and we see it all around us. But the society has become, either there are these evil characters who are doing it, or the spineless people who are just being apathetic and allowing it to happen.
We still remember that when we were in Hyderabad, we wanted to raise our servants' salary, or we were paying more. There were other people around the neighborhood. They say, "What is this you're doing?
You're making the rates go up.
You're spoiling the market."
Yeah.
And in a sense, I think too with Ashok's character, one might even read him as even more so unlikable. It's like he has this privilege, kind of seeing the way people are treated, and that's inhumane. But he doesn't. Whereas the more evil characters, they don't see in the same way that he does. So you almost can't blame them.
Yes.
They're blinded, so you can't blame them for their actions. Whereas with Ashok, he does see. He sees the light, so to speak, but he continues to allow it to happen. So.
True.
We have got a caller.
I think we lost.
Oh, we lost them. Oh, okay.
So
please come back again. We will talk.
Yeah. So very interesting. And he does say that when he's reflecting on it, as White Tiger or Ashok Sharma, the name he has taken, he says that he has no remorse about the murder, though he thinks that Ashok was a good guy and he wishes that he had done it to the mongoose instead, but he has no remorse because he says that it allowed me to at least have, even if the police comes and catches me, I lived some days when I was not a servant.
The best part is that he remembers, he gets up in the middle of the night with a nightmare that he didn't do this, and he's relieved that
he didn't.
He did the act, of murder.
There are many points that I always, when I was reading the book, I felt that he had certain sociopathic tendencies where he doesn't, even as he is talking about the murder, he keeps normalizing it.
Yeah.
He keeps bringing in other things,
and then just slips in that he murdered
someone, and he just moves away from it as though there is no absolutely no remorse.
No sense of no remorse.
No remorse at all.
This very much reminds me of that book which we did of a Turkish author. My Name is Red.
Yeah.
Where the person does a murder and then he's very cool about it. And he's walking around and he's also trying the same way, justification from time to time.
So, do we have to take a break now?
Yes, we have to take a break again.
Yeah. And this will be the last break. After which we will be winding up.
Okay, then let's take a small break and we'll talk some more.
Now you have multiple ways to stay connected with us on Radio Azad. You can listen to us on radioazad.us, iTunes, Azad Online, and shoutcast.com. You can listen to us on your iPhones via our free iPhone app, and on your Blackberries and Android phones via the Tunein Radio and High Def Radio app. You can also join us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch us on YouTube. Now Radio Azad will be with you everywhere you go. TM Video, specializing in photography, videography with 10 years of experience. For all your weddings, anniversaries, engagements, birthdays, graduations, etc. Let TM Videos take care of your photography and videography needs. They can also provide you with a DJ and live music. Mention Radio Azad and get 25% off any quote that you have received. Contact Ali Dhamani at 469-556-7271. 469-556-7271. Or visit them at tmvideos.net.
Afra offers authentic halal Lebanese food influenced by a variety of Mediterranean flavors. Their food is a feast for the senses, and they are famous for their shawarma pita sandwiches, fresh bread, pies, and homemade gelato and baklava. Since 2002, Afra has offered unbeatable flavors of the Mediterranean in a family-friendly environment. For an unforgettable Mediterranean meal, visit Afra today at 314 East Main Street in Richardson. Check out their menu at www.afra.com.
Hey brother, good to see you after all this time. लेकिन क्या बात है, तुम कुछ कमजोर लग रहे हो. न्यूयॉर्क में खाना अच्छा नहीं मिलता क्या?
नहीं यार, वो बात नहीं. अपने बिजनेस की फिक्र खाई जा रही है मुझको. We've been so busy taking care of accounting, payroll and cash flow that our sales and marketing has suffered.
ये तो कोई मसला नहीं है. Go to रोशन अजानी CPA for all your business accounting services. He's the best in the business. तुम बाहर से आए हो तो तुम्हें बता रहा हूँ. यहाँ पर रोशन अजानी CPA का ही सिक्का चलता है.
Really? What about retirement planning?
Yes, रोशन अजानी takes care of all your tax services, payroll, cash flow management and retirement planning too. एक काम कर, टेंशन लेना छोड़ और CPA रोशन अजानी को अभी फोन लगा 1877-5095 CPA और अधिक जानकारी के लिए cpaajani.com पर जाओ.
Hi, this is Kimberly Kinzer, a full-service immigration attorney. I handle green cards for family members and employees, fiancé visas, investors visas, employment visas, Violence Against Women's Act petitions, deportation defense, asylum, citizenship, including waivers for the English and history exams. My law firm is also experienced in handling complicated cases and cases pending too long, and most importantly, federal litigation. In the hour of need, do remember Kinzer Law Office in Richardson. For more information, please visit kinzerlaw.com or call 972-491-1145. That's 972-491-1145.
आप सुन रहे रेडियो आजाद वॉइस ऑफ द पीपल. हमारा फोन नंबर है 9725019390. लाइव आप सुन रहे हैं ऑन इंटरनेट at www.radioazad.us. मैक यूजर समय सुन रहे हैं in-shoutcast.com. नंदिता और मैं आपके लिए पेश कर रहे हैं किताबों में लिखा है प्रोग्राम. हमारे साथ हैं अनाका एंड एनी एंड वी आर डिस्कसिंग द बुक व्हाइट टाइगर बाय अरविंद अडिगा. तो वो नंदिता.
तो ब्रेक से पहले हम बात कर रहे थे अबाउट द बुक अरविंद अडिगा's द वाइट टाइगर. वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट द मॉरल एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ द बुक एंड हाउ द मैसेज कुड बी इंटरप्रेटेड and how the justification works. So, time to talk about Aravind Adiga. So, Annie, you have done a lot of research on Aravind Adiga.
Not really. I just happen to know some basic information, I would say, on Aravind Adiga. I came to know that his parents are from Mangalore, so that part of it interested me.
You are also from the same place, right?
Right now, my parents live in Mangalore, so that's one of the reasons I was drawn to his biographical details. But yes, he was born in Chennai. He grew up and he had till his high school. That is, he studied in Canara School and then he studied in St. Aloysius School, high school. And before the family moved to Australia, and later he went to Columbia and did his English literature.
Yeah, he went to Oxford also to do some courses there. Yeah.
Yes.
So. One of the interviews which I was reading, which was right after he won the Booker, I think, and there was so much criticism in India. So the question to him was, he writes it from this point of view of Balram Halwai. He's the voice of Balram Halwai, who is the poorest of poor, whereas Aravind Adiga has had this privileged life, and we were talking about post-colonial writers, and we can talk about that. He has had this privileged life where his parents were doctors, I think, at least one of his parents, and he has lived most of his life outside India. he has a good job, comes back to India as a journalist for one of the
Time magazine.
Time magazine. And so how justified is he to talk about Balram Halwai and his point of view and looking at society from their angle? So this question did come up to him, and you were talking about post-colonial writers, many of whom are writing about the injustices of the society, whereas they are benefiting from the advantages which few people seem to have.
Right. Many or most of the writers have benefited from the education or the westernization per se, but then they're also critiquing the same society, the westernization and whatnot. So it's a very interesting paradox. And again, writing about experiences that they haven't experienced. He's often, for example, compared to Charles Dickens and the idea that he's, being very critical of society. But Dickens, on the other hand, did experience. He was like, at some points, poor as a child. He had to work in, factories and whatnot. So in a sense, you could say Dickens was justified in taking on the persona of the poorest poor in England. But here we have a writer who's led a very privileged life, writing about those who have not had any privileges. So it is a very interesting paradox. But on the other hand, in a sense, he gives a voice to the people that might not otherwise have a voice.
Yeah. So his answer was the same. He says that you don't have to write about yourself. You write about what you're seeing around you. And what I would say, having lived abroad, sometimes when you are in the same place, you're sort of caught in the rooster coop in a different way, in a different dimension.
True.
You don't notice things.
You don't see.
Just like Ashok was noticing it more because he had been in America, studied there and come back. Same way, having seen the outside world, he notices this more and feels compelled to write about it. Whereas the Indian authors today who are writing from India, many of them have of course been abroad and lived abroad. Say Chetan Bhagat, he's writing about the middle class people. Most of the subjects of the Indian authors today is the middle class, because they are the ones who will read the books and they want to read about themselves. Very few people are writing about the poor. I think we did review one book by Rohinton Mistry, The Fine Balance, where he wrote about the poor, and he had the same criticism because he came from privileged background and he lives in Canada now. Yet he felt that it was important for him to give a voice to these people who are not being heard.
So that book also left us with no hope.
Yeah. So definitely it's important that some people, because no one is writing about the poor people in India. Everyone is writing about the middle class, if not the rich. The movies are sometimes showing a very unrealistic picture of India, a very glamorous, which only the very, very privileged few have.
Especially Bollywood.
Not maybe a movie like, which was that, in which Kaun Banega Crorepati type.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire, of course, was different, but otherwise, most of the movies show a very glamorous picture of India. The writers are writing about middle class India, but there exists this huge number of people who are living below the poverty line, and we see them everywhere. You just have to go on a road of Bombay or Delhi. You don't even have to go to the villages to see them.
We have a caller. We can.
Yeah.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, Megha.
Hi. I lied the first time. Now don't think of me as one of the like the author, the writer of the protagonist.
Okay.
But I just started listening. I just tuned in again, so I don't know what parts you guys have discussed yet. But one good thing is that it has been buffering, so I don't know if it's like a lot of people listening right now. But when I started listening, it was buffering also. So anyway. The reason I called was I think you guys are just wrapping up, and I was thinking, from a person who has never been to India, or from who has never lived in India, would if they read this book, they consider, what would they think of India? Would they still want to go visit, where people just get, killed on the roadside? Because there are at least 3 people who get killed in this whole book.
I was thinking of the same thing I was expressing.
Let's ask Anaka what she thinks about it.
Yeah, and it's a good question, but I think that, that it's a work of literature, and I don't think a person should read it and have this complete idea this applies to an entire country as a whole. It's a work of literature exploring one man's quest for freedom or individuality and whatnot. So I think most readers would still have a good idea of India and still visit India having read the book. I don't think it would bar anyone from visiting.
So definitely the interview I was reading, which happened in 2008, they mentioned that the Indian Tourism Board was livid with rage after the coming out of this book.
I was surprised if, I would not be surprised if any of the religious organizations also came out against it, because I think at a couple of places he talks about caste system and, in a satirical way. And
and
also,
the Hindu gods.
Yes, and the Hindu gods, and he sort of refers to Hanuman as a very loyal servant, which is, in stark contrast to what Hindus believe. And also, but, of course, he's not lying at any point. I mean, Hanuman is very loyal to Ram, but of course, he's using that to make a different point. Also, and in a couple of places he mentions Islam also, right? He talks about how there are these great poets like Rumi and Iqbal and
he talks about 4 people who have written.
He always forgets, and he says all these great poets are from, Islamic background, yet you see all these Islamic people who are,
terrorists.
Very different. I would, if I had the book in front of me, I would have quoted the exact words, but since I don't want to just say it. But he says it in a very, he contrasts that very well. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, and I don't know if y'all got a chance to talk about the question, discuss the question whether, how do you feel about him washing his hands off of the entire homicide?
Yeah, we did discuss it a lot, the moral part or the ethical part of it.
Right. Okay, yeah, because he just pays off the parents and he
okay, that's an interesting part, and we need to talk about it. We have been saving it for Megha to come back.
Here's the whole life salary, and then, your son would have made, and then he makes the whole thing go away by taking away the paperwork from the list.
That's a very interesting part of the book, and I didn't look at it exactly the way you're looking at it, Megha, but let's hear Annie or Anaka, what's their take. She is mentioning that part where after Balram Halwai has become Ashok Sharma or the White Tiger, he has this fleet. One of his driver runs into a bicyclist, a child who is cycling, and kills the child. And
he goes out of the way to take him out of the...
And he just saves his driver, first of all, and says that he is not to be blamed. And the next thing he does is, of course, the police, he has a very good rapport with them. He bribes them often, so he dismisses the case. And then finally goes off to pay the parents of the child. What do you think about this incident?
I think that one of it could be what had happened to him when his masters were trying to frame him with regard to killing a child. He's trying to take a different kind of a stand. When the person who works for him runs over a child.
And in this case, it's like he has really done. He could be blamed. Like he could have totally washed off his hand and said that he was the driver, he was driving, he goes to jail. I am only a taxi service person, so I am the person who owns the taxi service. But he takes a very different stand.
But then the stand he takes is not really of the truth. He is, again, whatever that stand also goes in with his line of amoral, irreligious.
He gets the case dismissed.
Yes, it just continues with whatever he was doing.
Yes, but there are two important things he does which is different from how Stork would have done it. Maybe not Ashok, Stork or Mongoose would have done it. First is they were poor people. After the police dismissed it, he could have just forgotten about it. Right? First of all, he could have implicated his driver and the driver would have gone to jail and the whole case would be over.
Yes.
The second thing is, after the police dismissed it, his driver is out. He did not have to go and pay the parents. And 25,000 rupees in India is not a small sum of money for a poor family. He goes to them, he pays them that money.
Faces embarrassment also.
And also offers to give a job to the brother as a driver. So he takes care of that family in a way. Not the lawful way, but what he thinks, there is a justice which he thinks should be done, and he is the judge. Of course, he's a megalomaniac, so he knows what he should be doing.
Yeah.
So in his eyes, he has been a good person by taking care of this.
He does have a sense of justice, so whether or not the reader agrees with his sense of justice is one thing. But two, I think it's interesting that the way he resolves this death, again, is with money. And in the very end, money fixes everything. I don't know if the author meant for that to be a point or whatnot.
Yes,
but
he definitely meant for it to be a point, because though the mother is reluctant to take, the father compromises and takes the money because the money is important for them. The child is gone, but this money will help bring food to their house or pay rents or take care of somebody's education for many months to come.
In a way, this is what I think any psychopath or any such person also has his own sense of principle or justice, and justifies it.
Yeah, good. Megha brought up this point. It was an interesting part of the book, because without this, the story is not complete. Like after becoming an entrepreneur, how he sees his role. And he talks about it, I don't have the book, but maybe you can read, where he says that how he treats the drivers who work for him. He doesn't treat them like family because he thinks it's insulting, because he was always told that you are a part of the family and he had to do all the menial tasks. At the same time, he treats them with respect, and he doesn't talk much to them. He has this, what should I say? A wall between them and him, but at the same time he gives them their dignity, and he says that if they want, they can see how I am doing, learn from it and grow higher, or they can continue to be drivers. So he has a very different way of dealing with his drivers. He gives them very justified salaries based on what the market rate is, and does not exert his power over them. He can ask them to do anything, right? Because they work for him. He can ask them to go and do his housework, but he doesn't do any of that.
I think he treats them very much as individuals, and I think that comes to be one of the themes of the novel, is the importance of man's need for individuality that one chooses for themselves. So I think in his treatment of the drivers as individuals, it kind of reflects that theme that's reflected throughout from the very beginning. He will do anything to become an individual and have control of his life, as opposed to have his fate handed to him. So I think, in a sense, by treating them with respect and whatnot, and giving them the opportunity to move or like stay where they are, kind of reflects that theme too, that they do have an opportunity and it's their choice and not something that's being given to them.
Yeah.
The same. The difference is he says that they can follow him.
Yeah.
So what would that mean? The way he became an entrepreneur?
Sort of the ways of the life, yes. Bribing, maybe they don't see the part of the murder, but definitely in a way he has said that, and it may be true to a good extent, that it's very hard for an entrepreneur today to survive in India if he is not following the route of bribing and corruption and taking care of the police, taking care of the politicians. You cannot survive in business. So these are the things they can learn.
I've heard in Bombay, if you run a store or a business, there will be people who come every week to collect money.
Hafta.
Yes. So and there are police who actually allow it to happen.
Yes.
The law does not stop it. So,
Yeah, definitely. It's after reading this book, you're forced to do this self-examination. All of us who grew up in India or lived in India, I lived as an adult, and I had servants work for me. So you are forced to look at yourself. I don't know people who are living in India still and having servants work for them for a pittance. You are forced to do a self-examination and think from their point of view. We are always thinking from our point of view. So this just does force you to think from their point of view. Maybe you will not do anything like Ashok, but it makes you think.
Yeah, I mean that's what for a foreigner, for people from abroad who look at India, they should view it as a fictional book. And for people who are in India, they should do it with some amount of self-examination.
true, very true.
Yeah, and Megha raised this point about whether people will go to India or not. And Anaka, you said that people will treat it as a fiction and one-man story. It was interesting because I was reading the reviews written by people on net, and at least 2 of them were foreigners who were about to visit India, and they had read the book because they felt people advised that, okay, read these books about India before you go there, and this was advised to them, and they found it very interesting and more intrigued to go and see their society.
So the curious element has come into this.
And it's not a secret, right? Any tourist who lands up in India or anyone who goes for business to India sees this injustice all around them. You have this big glass high-rise buildings where the rich are living, and by the side you have the slums where the poorest of poor are living. And they see it, and they see the beggars, they see what's happening around them.
Very true.
Right. In a sense, the criticism is, I find it quite unfair that, he has been criticized for portraying this aspect of India. Because again, not only is he giving a voice to those who might not have a voice, but the point of a novel is to examine what it means to be human. And so he's examining what does it mean to be human in this particular circumstance. How does a man find himself or lose himself in this particular circumstance? So I found the criticism, quite unfair.
Yeah. I think we are in the last 2 minutes. Annie, you want to say some concluding words?
I hope you enjoyed the show today.
I really hope all the listeners enjoyed the show. It was a very interesting read, and I hope you all grab a book of The White Tiger and read it, and maybe another time we have a book review, you can come back and ask us questions.
Sure, wonderful. It was
really very great. Good having you both here.
Yes,
very good discussion.
So much.
Thank you very much for
very
having
enjoyable.
us.
Yes, and we will certainly coordinate for more books, and
we look forward to having you with us.
Again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this book review. We try to justify to a good extent, and we will come back to you again with another book very shortly. We will announce it. So आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, धन्यवाद, खुदा हाफिज, शब बखैर. Thank you.
Thank you.